What's going on, ladies and gents? This is Bento, and today's video is actually a tutorial for the Steam controller. More specifically, I'm going to go over the mouse style of input that you can find on the left and right trackpads. I really like the mouse style of input. I think it's really good for camera movement, and for other games where you have a mouse cursor, it works really well. So today's video, what I want to do is actually go over the different functions that you can assign to the mouse style of input. So that way you guys have a better idea of how you want to tweak the input to your own needs. So I'll go through the list of options that you can choose from, as well as show you guys some gameplay just to let you guys see how it works. The first function is what's known as click action, and as its name implies, whenever you click the trackpad, it'll do whatever action you assign it to, and you can assign it from the keyboard, the mouse, or even the game controller. The next function is sensitivity. Pretty straightforward. All you have to do to increase sensitivity is move the bar to the right, and to the left will decrease it. The next function is rotation, and what rotation does is actually change the horizontal alignment of the trackpads, and the purpose of this is to actually be able to account for your natural thumb movements. So let's say, for example, you wanted to swipe to the right in order to move the camera to the right, but your thumb naturally moves upwards. So by moving the horizontal line to follow that movement, so by doing this, whenever you do your normal swipe movement, the trackpad has been accounted for, and so you'll be able to swipe right on the camera as you intended. The next function is acceleration, and acceleration is actually similar to how you'd find it on your typical mouse settings. Essentially, when you swipe faster, if you want increased sensitivity, then you would increase acceleration. The next function is trackball mode, and what trackball mode does is that it additionally turns your trackpad into a trackball. So you actually have the added benefit of doing swipe motions, and basically you can flick the trackpad wherever you want. Following trackball mode, trackball friction actually affects how fast or slow your flicking ends, and so if your friction is on a higher setting, then your flicking will end much faster, but if you put it on a lower setting, then your flicking will actually end much later. The next function is friction vertical scale. It's actually very similar to trackball friction, except that it only occurs in the vertical axis, and by increasing it, you actually limit the amount of movement that goes up and down. So this can actually work for people who want to make their swipes left or right more oriented in the horizontal position. So by increasing it, your swipes only occur in the horizontal position, and then if you were to decrease it, it'll be more natural to how you flick it. The next function is mode shifting, and what mode shifting does is basically assign a second style of input to the trackpad of your choice, complete with all the customizable options that you could want. The next is haptics intensity, and haptics intensity is sort of similar to vibration on a typical gamepad, except you get more physical feedback as you're using the trackpad. Next is invert vertical axis, and it's pretty straightforward. All you're doing is flipping your orientation of the vertical axis. So on to the advanced settings. The next is sensitivity vertical scale. And basically, as its name implies, you're changing the sensitivity on a vertical axis. This is sort of similar to friction vertical scale in that if you actually decrease the sensitivity, you limit how much movement occurs vertically. And so that way your swiping occurs only to the left and right. The next is touch binding, and as its name implies, you're assigning a function from the keyboard, mouse, or controller to the touch portion of the trackpad. The next is trigger press mouse dampening, and how this works is that if you were to press and hold the trigger that's been assigned, you'll actually decrease the amount of mouse movement that occurs. Currently, you can do this for one trigger and or both. Following that, there is also a bar that can increase or decrease the dampening. The next is smoothing. Sort of similar to how smoothing works for mouse movement, it essentially filters out really small noise and small mouse movements that occur. So by increasing it, you filter it greatly, and by decreasing it, you unfilter it. The next is double tap binding, and as its name implies, you can essentially assign a keyboard, mouse, or controller function to double tap on the trackpad. Following that, you have double tap duration. Decreasing the bar means you have to double tap a lot faster to make sure it works, and increasing the bar means you have a little more leeway. Following that, we have double tap beep, and basically you can assign a sound effect whenever the double tap occurs. Next, we have edge spin radius, and how edge spin radius works is that whenever you touch the outer reaches of the trackpad, mouse input will actually be sent at a constant rate. And this also differs based on how far from the center you also put your thumb on. And by decreasing the edge spin radius, you also decrease the circle, and so the edges come closer towards the center. And by increasing it, you're bringing the edges more outward. Following that is edge spin speed, so you can determine how fast the edge spin will go. And if you want to turn it off completely, you actually bring it all the way to the left. Next, we have minimum movement threshold, and what this does is basically limits the amount of small movement that occurs in your mouse. This is usually only really needed for applications that have like aggressive clamping or filtering of the mouse, so you don't really need to use this as much. But if you do, increasing it means you have to move the mouse a little more, and decreasing it means you don't have to move it as much. Lastly, we have invert horizontal axis, and as its name implies, you're basically just switching around your left and right movements. So that's it, guys. I hope this little tutorial helped you understand a bit more into customizing your controls for your mouse style of input. If you have any thoughts or comments, please leave them down below. But thank you guys for watching, and I'll see you all next time.